Hello everyone, my name is Mia and I have been called to make this video for the past few weeks now, and I felt very strongly about making it. I'm a little bit nervous, but it really feels like the right thing to do, and I hope it's going to be helpful to some of you out there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and what the last 2 years have been like for me, and in relation, I suppose, to mental health. So 2 years ago, or a little bit longer even, I started to feel a little bit of anxiety, which manifested itself as being nervous going in to teach my yoga classes, feeling overwhelmed about teaching, not sleeping very well, like waking up during the night, I suppose, falling asleep easily, but waking up during the night. And this coincided with life changes for me. So the life changes were my children had started leaving home at that stage. Well, my son has gone quite a while, but one of my daughters had left. I had moved house. My second daughter was getting ready to leave, and also it was the end of my cycle of my I was moving into the menopause. My period, my bleeding stopped, we'll say, 2 years ago. The other thing that happened was I met a beautiful man, and he moved in to live with me shortly afterwards. So I'm just going to tell you how all these different things affected me, and I suppose where it led me on my journey. So the first thing was that I suppose the end of my bleeding came, and it seemed like a gift because I was in this new relationship, and we were clear around our sexual health, and so it meant we didn't have to use contraception, and so that seemed like a really a gift, and I was quite happy to be in that phase of my life in many ways. I was also felt I was ready for my children to move on, and yet there is that there was that sadness, and it was the beginning of a loss of identity. And the other thing about being in a very loving relationship, and this was a very deeply loving relationship, and we started to study Tantra and look at how we can make this the purest form of loving possible, and really it's a devotion to the divine when we come together. So the relationship, when a man loves a woman that deeply, what it often does is disturbs the stuff that we've been holding in our womb for a long time. So our old painful stories around sexuality, our shame, our guilt, old hurts, and other experiences. So when the man loves you very deeply, this stuff comes up to be transformed. So it's a good thing that it comes up, but not always the easiest thing. So there was a combination of things going on in my life. I was being loved very deeply. I was in the menopause. My children were leaving home. And also, if I'm to be honest, I was changing physically, and it seemed to be happening sort of rapidly. I'd look in the mirror and I'd be going, oh my God, my eyes are starting to droop, or, my face is starting to droop. And then I made the decision to let my hair go grey and all that time and space as well, and which I'm in the process of, as you know. So a combination of a lot of things, but it got to the point where this anxiety that was happening for me led me to a place where actually I had to take time off. So as many of you know, I haven't taught a lot in the last 18 months. I've done some workshops and bits and pieces of classes, but I haven't committed to a whole lot. I've almost had 18 months off work. And that has been really challenging as well, because I've had to put myself in a position of receiving. Now, I'm really privileged to be able to receive. I want to say that as well. I recognize that this is a very privileged position that I'm in. However, having been a single mom and, really kind of worked my ass off and to try and make sure my kids had everything for 12 years, kind of on my own, that it's very unusual to be in this position of receiving, and it's very humbling in many ways. But what I really wanted to share was where I went to, I suppose, within myself. I spent a lot of time crying. I would cry at the drop of a hat. I also would startle very easily. So if somebody walked behind me or something, I would, kind of feel startled. I felt tired all the time. I felt overwhelmed by the smallest of things. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is not because I'm looking for sympathy, is I want people to recognize that anxiety and depression can look like this. So, to the world, I'm, a very confident woman. I'm self-assured. I'm open. I like this. I make videos. I'm not afraid to stand up and speak. If I was at a workshop or a retreat, a meeting, I'd be the first with my hand up with something to share. That doesn't mean, though, that I wasn't suffering from this anxiety. And I'm now willing to say depression. I wasn't all along. And that brings me to my next point. My ego got so in the way of my recovery that it really delayed the process, because I felt so much shame, an incredible amount of shame, and I couldn't name the word, I couldn't use the words anxiety, and I couldn't use the words depression, because I felt, as a healer and as a person who has, I suppose, works with people and leads people and teaches people and, guides people, that I just shouldn't be feeling like this. And I also thought that I was going to sail through the menopause. I knew what it was all about. I was going to embrace everything. And, up until the time when my bleeding stopped, I slept like a baby. So, and I was really proud of that. It was almost like an achievement, oh, I never wake up. I just hit the pillow and, that's it. And that all changed. And of course, the less I was sleeping, the more anxious and the lower my mood was. Getting up in the morning was a real struggle, but I did get up, and I'm grateful for there was some place inside me, that could manage to get up. The other thing that I noticed was that it was really hard to do the things that work. So for me, it was a real challenge to meditate. It was a real challenge to go for a walk. On a sunny day, I could make myself do things. On a rainy day, I just found it so hard. And this was with, like a really loving, supportive man with great kids. I had a lot of things going for me, but this was still happening inside me. But as I say, the biggest thing was this shame. I shouldn't feel like this. So I didn't really want to acknowledge what it might be. And it kind of came to a head when I was in Italy. Again, sounds very privileged. I got to go to Italy for the summer, last year. However, it wasn't really a privilege. It was an upheaval in our lives, because it was partially out of necessity that we went away. It meant leaving my kids, which I thought I was going to be okay with. Turns out I wasn't. And like that, I had some great days there. This wasn't a constant low, but I would say I probably cried most days, and I was afraid to go for walks on my own. I did manage to make myself drive so that I did get some kind of time out from the house that we were living in. Anyway, I'm losing my train of thought. My point was that because I wasn't willing to fully acknowledge this, it delayed the process of doing something about it. So what I did do was, from time to time, I went for healings, and I had, wonderful people that I went to, and I'd have, maybe a Reiki healing or reflexology or, a session here and there. But obviously that wasn't enough, and it would keep me going. It would, I'd get another couple of weeks, and I used the time. I studied a course in miracles. I'm still studying a course in miracles. I did a life coaching course. I embarked on Landmark. So there was lots of other bits and pieces going on. I was out and about meeting people, but I still couldn't bring myself to work. I stopped believing in the teaching that I was doing. Just went to this really low place. So what I finally did was I went to see a herbalist, and I went to see an amazing woman called Siobhan Shillers, and I hope she sees this at some point. And it wasn't that going to a herbalist cured me. These are the little things that can happen, but it was that I went to a herbalist thinking that, okay, she'll recognize something that's wrong. And it was only when I was sitting there and I started to speak and I started to cry, and I started to recognize this deep sadness in me and this deep fear inside in me, and this real fearful place. And I finally, as she was asking me different questions, she did iridology, and she talked a little bit about depression and things. And it finally dawned on me, I'm anxious and I think I'm depressed. And it was such a relief in a way to say it. Now, in saying it, I was kind of determined that I was going to move myself out of it. But I've been seeing her now for a good few months, and it was, I think, on the third, after having this third tincture. So I'm taking tinctures for various different things, but mostly for my nervous system. And after I took, and hormonal sort of balance stuff really around the menopause. But I took the third one, and this is where the miracle of going to see somebody and sort of finally admitting that there's something going on. The miracle started to happen there, because I suddenly had the impetus to join a yoga class. Of course, in the meantime, I had moved house as well. I had moved down to Kerry, and the last of my children, I swear I had about 20, but my fourth child had moved away, so it was just Clive and I. But anyway, so I'm living in this new area, grieving leaving Killaloo, but felt divinely inspired to move to Kerry. So, here we are. But it was at this point in time that I kind of started to feel level enough, because of taking the herbs, to get to a place where I could go, oh, I should join a yoga class. Okay, so the next little stage on my recovery, and I went to, I've started going to a yoga class on a Friday night, a yin yoga class, which is just perfect for me, allowing me to, I suppose, relieve and let go of different things. The next thing I did was I started teaching again. So I'm just teaching one class, not too overwhelmed by that. And, that's been amazing. And then a life event happened, which kind of catapulted me back into this sort of stressed place again. And I thought, okay, there must be something else I can do. I'm also, in the meantime, have been doing Landmark and Course in Miracles, all helping me. And I came across, I've known Maura Geary, but I came across her quantum release technique. A therapist that was doing it in Kerry, Maura put me in touch with her, and I went for that. And hallelujah, so much lifted for me and shifted for me. And, I started doing frogs on a daily basis, Kundalini frogs, which are amazing for lifting your mood. I'm doing 108 of them a day. So one thing led to another, but I think the first thing was going to the herbalist and admitting, just being able to say, that this is my mental health, this is my nervous system, this is the woman who thought she would sail through a menopause, and it's all shagged up at the moment. And yes, I do feel depressed. And I really want to reach out to, especially all people, but people in the healing profession who think that our egos, that we're beyond this, or that this shouldn't happen to us, or we should be sort of, perfect if we're in that position of leading, teaching, guiding, healing. And I think that for me was the biggest lesson in all of this, that I'm not beyond any of that, and to admit it. And to say that this is what having poor mental health from time to time can look like. So it doesn't mean that you're in a darkened room under the covers. You can literally be out and about and doing things and looking well, and have all that going on underneath. So, this is 18 months practically off work, and I did a few workshops, did a few classes, but they took so much building up inside myself to do them. Now, I do know, once I start teaching and once I start, leading a workshop, that something else, the divine, takes over anyway. And throughout all of this, I did pray. So various things came my way, that were helpful. And I believe I had to go through a lot of what I went through. And, the gratitude I have at the end of this journey is that I have a deeper understanding of anxiety and of depression when I'm working with people. That's the gift always when we go through things, and just to never take anything for granted, to really live in the now and in the moment, and know that there really is help out there. And the first thing, is very often admission, and having that spark of wanting to feel well and whole again. So where I am now is that I've had the quantum release technique. I'm still on my herbs and I intend staying on them for, until I suppose Siobhan suggests that I come off them, but at the moment they're great. And I'm also using what's called havening technique. And I've been so blown away by that I'm off to the UK soon to train in it. I have my life coaching business off the ground now, and I have some clients coming, and it's very exciting. And like that, I have a real understanding of what many of them are going through. I'm still in that place of battling with, the transition from mother to crone or queen, or, into those crown years. And, there are days where I, feel like dyeing my hair. There are days when I think if I had money, I'd have a facelift. I wouldn't, but I do think these things, or I kind of think, oh, imagine if my breasts were back there, or so I just watch my ever changing body and but I'm, there's a softening that's happening that I absolutely love. And it's happening, to my body, it's happening to my hair, but it's also happening in my heart. And I have to, fully embrace that and be really grateful for that. So I hope sharing this is helpful to people because, there's so much stigma around mental health and it affects all of us at different phases and times in our life. But the biggest thing for me was recognizing that there's nothing to be ashamed about, there's nothing to be embarrassed about, and how big our bloody ego can be. And especially, as I say, when we're in these professions, we just expect to be invincible and that nothing is going to go wrong. So I'm really grateful to be feeling well today. I'm grateful for my deeper understanding. I'm grateful for my faith. I'm so grateful for my friends who have supported me and my partner who has supported me during this time. And you were all there for me, and I know some friends in particular that walked with me while I shed tears, or listened to me down the phone, and that's priceless, having those people in my life. So I really want to say thank you. You know who you are. And my Facebook friends, because it's been such a community. And I hear some people, complaining about Facebook or giving out. I've got the most amazing people on Facebook. And sometimes just looking at posts and having that there, was as much as I could do. But I did feel loved and cared for, even though I know many of you didn't know what was going on for me. But I felt very loved and cared for by the Facebook community. So I do need to acknowledge them as well and say that. So as I say, I hope this is helpful. Feel free to share it. That would be wonderful if it can help other people. But I do think the first port of call is when you're feeling that low that you need to stop working, is that you actually are willing to acknowledge fully where you're at. Because I was half acknowledging it. I was doing that. I was saying, oh, I feel a bit overwhelmed, or I feel burnt out, or I feel tired, but I wasn't willing to, to say my heart is broken right now, because my children are leaving and I don't know who I am, or I'm changing completely, or I don't sleep. I didn't want to say that. I wanted to pretend that it's kind of a passing thing. And I'm not talking about dwelling on stuff. I'm just talking about simply acknowledging it and saying, this is what it's like for me. And when you acknowledge it, just solutions start to arrive. I mean, that's what I really found. I started going to Siobhan because a friend of mine was going and she was looking amazing. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, actually, I'm going to see a herbalist. That for me is the divine intervention. That's where I pray and the divine sends something my way. It comes in the form of a friend sharing something like that. It comes in the form of, Clive making the money available to me to go. Because again, it's a luxury, sometimes to do these things. And I'm really aware of that. The divine allows me to receive with gratitude. And I know someday that, I'm going to be in a position to say, if Clive wants to do something, that I'm going to be the one saying, yeah, well, that's okay. Here, allow me to pay for it. because that all goes around and around. So I really, yeah, I just hope this is helpful. I'm really grateful if you've watched it. Please subscribe to my channel. I do intend putting up bits and pieces. And again, I've noticed that I can put them up. Sometimes it takes an effort for me to come on, and then other times I'm just dying to share something. So it might be sporadic at times, but please do subscribe. There is stuff going up on a regular basis, fairly regular basis anyway. And thank you for watching. And yeah, I really do hope this is helpful. Namaste and lots of love and sparkles.